I don't know about you, but job search ghosting is making me absolutely crazy because I've applied to so many jobs only to hear nothing back. To apply for jobs, and in fairness, sometimes I do hear things back in a very cold, generic email months and months later. No lie, I was applying to some jobs in February, and just a couple weeks ago at the beginning of December, I got an email back saying that this job is no longer hiring. You know, the standard things they say. They say things like, we're no longer hiring for this position. Unfortunately, this role has been closed. We decided to go in other directions in this position. I have no problem losing out to another candidate, but to just sit there and have no idea what's going on and they tell you, we're not hiring someone else, we're just not hiring anyone. Even one or two positions doing that is a problem, but three or more is definitely a trend, and we're certainly at the trend level. But I can go into more of that later. Today's article is from CNBC, and as always, the articles I reference are listed down in the description below, so you can read the full thing for yourself. I'm just going to talk about the highlights and how it pertains to what we're talking about today. But the headline is, most job seekers say they've been ghosted or love bombed during interviews. It can make them question their career and sanity. And this is definitely a mindset and a feeling that I can relate to, but let's see the examples that CNBC shares with us. It says, Deborah Boggs helps executive level leaders get hired, but even they're not safe from frustrating experiences. So I'm not an executive level. I don't know about you, but reading through the comments, it doesn't seem like a lot of us here in this labor gains community are executive levels. So it's kind of one of those things. If the people at the very top are struggling, if the executives are struggling, I don't see how the common man like you and I has any hope of succeeding in this job market. Boggs once had a candidate interviewing for a vice president level role. He had gone through a few rounds of discussions and was feeling good about things overall. So when he was invited in for a follow-up interview on site, he took it as a promising sign and was eager to make the trek, even though it was a 3-hour commute. Now, we've talked previously about you don't have a job because you won't relocate. Now, it's one thing to relocate once you already have a job. In a perfect scenario, if you did have to relocate, the company would pay to fly you out for the interview. The company would pay for you to relocate, so maybe money to get on your feet for the first month, to maybe put a down payment on an apartment, maybe to just help you with your moving expenses, things of that nature, so that it wasn't such a loss at the very beginning of your career there. But this example is a 3-hour commute, so doesn't have to fly anywhere, but still a 3-hour drive. His optimism didn't last. The hiring manager was late to the interview and then only gave him half an hour of his time. So can you imagine that scenario? I guess we can, right? We've all been in interviews where someone has been drastically late, or I don't know about you, but I've had the experience where someone has basically rescheduled an interview the day of. I've had messages, emails, texts like 20 minutes before, oh, I'm sorry, something came up and this vice president can't meet with you. But at an executive level, this is still happening to people. And 3-hour commute. Now, not flying in, like I said, but driving 3 hours. And I'm sure they know where these people live before they even go out for the interview. And you're not early. I mean, you should really be respectful of someone's time. You should really appreciate the fact that someone's going to drive 3 hours for an interview, and then you're not just not early, you're 3 hours late and you give them 30 minutes of your time. And this is an executive level. This isn't the typical people like you and I who get pooped on all the time, the bare bottom, the bottom of the barrel, the client-facing people, the customer service. This is high-level executives being treated this way. The dramatic shift in respect for his time and efforts was a real red flag. The candidate rescinded his candidacy. There were some other red flags that came up during the process, but I said, this is the best they're ever going to offer you in terms of respect. And yeah, a lot of times we're not in a position where we can worry about, unfortunately, the respect. If we've been laid off and we need to get a new job, we have to ignore some red flags if we do get an offer. I mean, if there's red flags, really what we have to do is just look for a new role, look for a new job once we have this job. We can't just sit around and wait several more months for the next opportunity. We got to take the job, even red flags, blemishes and all, and continue our job search. But I guess maybe if you're in an executive level, you probably have a headhunter and you have other people helping you out, so you're gonna have more than one interview. But wow, 3 hours commute to a job interview and then treat it like that. I mean, how would you react to that? Let me know down in the comments below. Have you had a similar experience? Because that is not cool at all. Stories of job seekers making progress on their search only to have the rug pulled out from under them later in the hiring process have become all too common. A majority of job seekers say they've experienced love bombing or being ghosted during the interview process for a new role, according to a recent survey of 2,900 global employees by Greenhouse, the hiring firm. Some 53% of job seekers say they've been love bombed by recruiters and hiring managers, meaning they've received excessive praise and flattery during the hiring process only to be passed over for the role, or lowballed with a salary and title that didn't match their qualifications, skills, and experience, according to the report. So this is something I've 100% been through. Now, I've been in an interview where the hiring manager, right, the person you're going to be working for, said, I felt really good about this interview. I think we might be good to go on giving you an offer. There's just one more round that you have to do. And then that second round was with 3 different people. I think 2 people in like parallel roles, and then one, I think, vice president. And I thought everything was good. I'm like, all right, we're in business, we're golden. And it wasn't like it was my dream job or anything like that, but because it was far less than I was making before. And I think it was like a contract to hire, but I was like, all right, well, I've been laid off and now it's time to take any kind of income. And I was like, all right, cool. The hiring manager loves you. You're usually said they'll fight for you even if someone else doesn't like you. But after that second interview, that second round of interviews, I didn't hear anything at all. I even messaged the hiring manager, didn't hear anything. Sent the emails after the interviews with the hiring manager and with after the second round of interviews to all the people there saying, thank you for your time. I look forward to the next step. Everything I heard has me really excited about working with you guys. Nothing, no ting. And so that was pretty annoying. But yeah, definitely received praise. Everything's going well, everything's sounding good, and then just got ghosted. A similar share, 52%, say they've been ghosted in the hiring process or had initial conversations, and in some cases made it to the final rounds of interviews only to never hear back from a recruiter or hiring manager about a decision. And yeah, you guys have told me previously, but I'd love to hear more stories about this, that you've gone on 4, 5, 6 interviews and then heard nothing. I mean, really past maybe the second interview, if they're not serious, I get that you can't give everyone a phone call, but if you're going on 4th and 5th, you shouldn't be giving 100 people 4th and 5th round interviews. You should be able to, at that point, call everyone, text them, keep them up to date somehow, some way. But I've heard from you guys and reading other articles, you've been on 4, 5, 6 interviews, and maybe a few months down the road, you get a generic email that you didn't get the job. They have another section called Why Companies Love Bomb Prospective Employees. Sending job seekers mixed signals, such as love bombing, could be a result of companies that want to hire quickly but don't know exactly what role they will need to fill. And this really comes from my experience of managers, but mostly vice presidents saying, hey, we need to hire someone for this position. And the manager says, okay, great. What do you want them to do? And he's like, I don't know, similar to this person or that person. Well, this person or that person has worked here 10 years. They are doing things drastically differently than the role that they were hired for. So it's not like they can copy and paste the job role that got that person in the first place. or they fired somebody or did rounds of layoffs and they just said, hey, hire new people at a lower rate. Well, people at a lower rate not only aren't going to be able to do what the previous people did, they're not going to have the experience, they're not going to want to do that, and it's not going to make a lot of sense to cut the salary for the role in half and expect people to do the same amount of stuff. So it gets really confusing, in fairness, for some of these hiring managers to come up with things. And it's even worse if the hiring manager just pawns this onto the recruiter or the HR department, because they might come up with a role just based off of the needs of other companies that don't match what the company they're hiring for that they work at needs at all. So it could get really, really vague and really, really messy when they're trying to hire for a new role and come up with a job description in the first place. The article goes on to say, it's common when businesses don't spend as much money to hire, like in today's market. In those cases, they tend to cram 1, 2, or 3 positions in one. Exactly what we're talking about. It's not a matter of, this person did really well, I'm trying to hire someone with the same exact skill sets. It's like, this person did decent, but I'm looking to save as much money as possible. So if 2 or 3 people can do the role of this one person, then that's great. It's, let's cut the salary for this in thirds and try to piecemeal all these roles and responsibilities into 3 different roles at a third or at least a half of the price. As a result, companies have been way too selective and frankly pushed too hard to get the exact person they want on paper for what they want at that time. What's funny is a lot of companies don't need that person 6 months from now. They just need it now, but most hiring is taking at least a quarter or 2, especially if you're an executive. By the time hiring managers realize what specific skills and objectives their new hire should have, it could be entirely different from what they envisioned at the beginning of the candidate search. Job seekers at the end of the process might feel whiplash when they learn they're no longer the top person for the role. They get that love bomb, everyone's excited, and then no email. It's a serious issue, he adds. Companies care so much about the customer experience, but we're not thinking about our employees and future employees. And that's where I kind of disagree. I don't think that these companies really care about customer experience. If not, because if they did, they would hire the best person for the job. They wouldn't try to outsource the role. And it's a question I propose to you almost every week. Go to your favorite app that you've had for years and tell me that the quality is just as good as it was 5 years ago. It's not going to be, because these companies don't care about customer experience. They don't care about if there's glitches in apps, if there's error messages. They don't care if they're on the hold forever because they don't have enough customer service representatives. They don't care if the UI is awful because they're not hiring seasoned UI experienced professionals or hiring freshers right out of college. These companies don't care. All they care about is increasing their bottom line by spending less money, and I get it. That makes shareholders happy, that makes the stock prices go up, but at some point, I believe down in my soul that the rubber is going to hit the road, and these companies are going to start paying for these sacrifices, for this downward spiral of quality that they're hiring for and that they're accepting. And eventually, it's not going to be good enough to just save money on talent and mess around with people in the interview process just to save money. Eventually, it's going to come back to bite these companies in the butt. So these companies can go and they can do this love bomb, they can do the praising, they can do all the ghosting in the world, but eventually it's going to catch up with them and they're not going to be able to do it anymore. They're going to have to treat employees with respect. I just pray that by the time that moment and that day comes, those of us who have been laid off don't completely run out of our savings. Talk to you later.